Far Cry series has changed dramatically over the years. The original was pretty much a cult PC hit. Number 2 had really interesting gameplay features like weapon jamming and the introduction of a fire spreading mechanic. Far Cry 3 went a little more mainstream by focusing on the single player story, but it introduced us to the psychopath Voss, the one that everybody loves to hate. Far Cry 4, on the other hand, is the first game to introduce nothing really new or noteworthy to a sequel in the franchise. It's the safest play that Ubisoft could have made, and it's made more disappointing than usual because of the stagnant state of video games at this point in time. The game takes place in Kyrat, which is pretty much a fictional take on Nepal. You take the role of newcomer AJ Gale, or as the locals pronounce it,
AJ Gale. Or, as we all pronounce it properly, AJ Agale. In fact, I have a bone to pick about this whole
a young man who wants to simply visit the country to spread his recently deceased mother's ashes in the place of her birth. But obviously things can't go as planned, right? Shortly into the story, you meet the game's main antagonist, Pagan Min.
No. It was the fucking Golden Path. Those fucking terrorists, they ruin everything. Like dinner. Did no one ever teach you that it's rude to text at the table? Let's see it. Really, guys? We're not checking for these anymore?
He's a very eccentric psychopath, just like Voss was in the previous game. But he isn't used enough for how great of a performance the character brings to Far Cry 4, and that's kind of a disappointment.
You don't text for help, you cry for help. So come on, you're gonna cry for help. If you're gonna do something, you're gonna do it right. Here we go. Go on. Cry for help.
AJ, or Ajay, has to team up with a rebel faction called the Golden Path in order to take down Pagan Min and change the country of Kyrat forever. The story sounds pretty interesting on paper, but I felt it hit pretty much all the same notes as the Far Cry 3 story. A young man who knows nothing of the region must gather all the courage to mold the country in a future that he seems fit, and take down the high-functioning sociopath who's tormenting him throughout his journey. It's really hard to get those similarities out of your head, but if you haven't played the previous Far Cry game, or you just force yourself to figure out everything that happens, you're really going to enjoy this story. Just for me, it's too similar to the previous game, and it's been too soon since the last game, and the story's just fresh in my head. There are points in the story where you have to make choices about which one of the two leaders in the Golden Path will have control over Kyrat until you hit your next story mission roadblock. And in the beginning, these don't seem like that big of a deal, but depending on your choice, it can really change up what's happening in the back fourth of the game. The story missions are pretty straightforward: save a bunch of dudes, shoot a bunch of guys in the face, but where you're going to have the most fun with Far Cry 4 is in the side missions. There are side missions like hunting, racing, survival mode, taking down outposts, a battle arena where you fight through waves of enemies, both human and animal, and even traversing Shangri-La and fighting off demons. These side missions are varied and really, really fun. It's just a shame that more of them weren't in the main story of the game. I can easily see people missing all the awesome Shangri-La moments just because they want to get through the main story, or just don't really care about side missions all that much. All of these great side missions are complemented by a very refined gameplay system that allows you to choose if strapping heavy machine guns and a rocket launcher to your side is your style, or maybe take the stealth approach, take a bow, and dispatch your enemies silently. It controls in a way that only a big developer like Ubisoft can do. You'll be running on foot, flying through the air with hang gliders or using your wingsuit, and even driving feels great, with cars having appropriate weight to them. It makes Far Cry 4 so enjoyable, I forget about the kind of recycled story, or the fact that killing 5 rhinos to make a single wallet is kind of access. Far Cry 4 also has some multiplayer modes in the form of co-op and a 5 vs 5 online match. The co-op is really fun. You and a friend go out into the open single player world and just mess up stuff double time. It changes up certain dynamics of side missions and the way you take over outposts because you have an extra person. The competitive mode, on the other hand, isn't something that really needs to be included in the game. It's not really that fun. The maps are just quarantine areas of the open world, and it's not really what I come to the Far Cry series for. If I wanted a multiplayer shooter, I'd just go play Call of Duty. Far Cry 4 is a very fun game, but it leaves a bad taste in my mouth for how similar it is to Far Cry 3 in a lot of respects. The story hits most of the same points that Far Cry 3 did, to the point of it almost feeling like some sort of alternate reality. What bums me out the most is that it just feels like a better version of something I've experienced before. Rather than when the previous games came out, every sequel felt new and exciting. Far Cry 4 leaves me with a split conclusion that I don't really like to have in reviews. If you've never played Far Cry 3, picking up this game will be a great experience for you. But if you've already played Far Cry 3 like I have, Far Cry 4 isn't a game you absolutely need to play.